Hello and welcome back to my channel. I decided to make this video because as I look through social media posts, it's become clear to me that there are basically two main groups of people when it comes to how they look at this whole COVID situation. Right? There are those who agree and understand that staying home and isolated is the best thing to do, and they're doing that. And then there are those who think that this is a little bit of an exaggeration, that the costs are not worth what we're doing, and they are proposing that we should just go back to live our lives normally and everything will be fine. So what I wanted to do with this video is perhaps provide some tools to help people look at the situation from a more analytical perspective and keep our emotions aside for a little bit and just try to see what is the situation really that we're facing and how can we frame that into a logical way of thinking, right? So let's look at an example. Here I have for you a little diagram that's called a decision tree, and I'll explain what this is trying to represent. Imagine that you're facing an uncertain future situation. So you're sitting here on this little green circle. And there are two futures that could come to pass. There's, say, one of them is a bad outcome and one of them is a good outcome. And this is completely out of your control. You don't have any influence on that, right? If the bad outcome happens, this number here is saying you're going to incur a cost of, let's say for the sake of the example, $100,000. And if you're lucky and it's the good outcome that comes to pass, there's no cost. Great. And again, let's assume for the sake of this example that the chance of this bad outcome is 60% and the chance of the good outcome is 40%. So if this is your situation and there's nothing else you can do, the only thing left is to, cross your fingers and hope for the best. But there is a 60% chance that you will have or lose or incur a cost of $100,000 and a 40% chance that you'll be fine and nothing bad will happen. Now imagine that if you're in a situation like this, there's actually something you could do about it. And I'm going to call this taking a proactive step. So I'm going to expand this tree and add that possibility. What if I do something to try to affect the future? Is that a good idea, right? That's the question. So let me go back to another sheet here where I have expanded this tree, right? Now I have added an action that I can take, and this is represented by this yellow box. So I'm sitting now at the yellow box, and I have two choices. I could take no proactive step, do nothing. Well, that just brings me back to the previous situation, right? If I do nothing, everything is out of my hands. I just sit there and wait, hope for the best. There's a 60% chance I will lose 100K. There's a 40% chance I'll be lucky and lose nothing. However, now I'm saying, well, what if I do something about it? And I take a proactive step. Well, this proactive step likely will have the following two characteristics. It's going to cost you something, right? And it is probably going to affect the chance of that bad outcome, as in it's going to reduce that chance. Because if it didn't reduce the chance of the bad outcome at all, why would you even do it, right? So we're going to assume the obvious, that taking a proactive step would only make sense if it brings some benefit. Great. For the sake of this example, here's what I'm doing. I'm saying the cost of the bad outcome is 100K. And the cost of the proactive step is going to be some percentage of that bad cost. Let's say for now 10%. So if you want to take this proactive step, it's going to cost you 10 grand. Great. Now, what is the benefit of this proactive step in terms of the chances of the bad outcome? Originally, we had our bad outcome chances at 60%. And let's say that if you take this proactive step, you reduce the chance of the bad outcome by this amount here, in my example, 75%. So if I take the proactive step, I incur a cost of 10 grand, but now the chance of my bad outcome is 75% smaller. That is, instead of being 60%, is 15%. Hence, the chance of the good outcome is 85%. Now, what's happening then in this bottom portion of the tree? There is a 15% chance that even though I took that proactive step, things are still going to go south, which means I will have wasted this 10 grand and I will still have to spend 100 grand. So there's a 15% chance I'm gonna spend $110,000. But on the other hand, there is an 85% chance that my only expense will be the 10 grand, right? Out here. So if I were to tell you this now, what would you like to do? Do nothing and have a 60% chance of losing 100K and a 40% chance of losing nothing, or take this proactive step and have a 15% chance of losing 110K and an 85% chance of only losing 10K. And I'm pretty sure that most people, if they look at this and think about it, they will say, well, you know what? I'm going to go here. All right? Because if this is something that happens to me in my life and will happen many, many times over and over, in the long run, right, the cost of taking this proactive step on average is only $25,000. And in the long run, the cost of doing nothing on average would be $60,000. Okay, the expected cost. Right. So you might be wondering, well, yeah, sure, but you assume that this was 10 and this was 75%. What if it's something different? Of course, right? What if it's something different? I just wanted to point something out. Look at this little yellow box here, right? There is a number there, there's number 2. What does that mean? Well, it's saying out of the 2 options that you can take, option 1 is no proactive step, and option 2, proactive step. The box is telling you the best thing to do with this particular data is to take the proactive step. So take option 2. I could go here and start changing this. Well, what if the cost of the proactive step is a little higher? Maybe it's a quarter, right, of the cost of the bad outcome. And it doesn't reduce the chance that much. Maybe it reduces the chance by 40% instead of 75%. In that case, notice that the box says now 1, which means this proactive step, even though it helps, the combination of its cost and the amount by which it helps is not enough to justify doing it, right? So in this case, right, if your proactive step costs a quarter of the bad outcome and only reduces the chance of the bad outcome by 40%, the tree is actually saying, you know what, just don't do it because it's not worth it. Okay. So the interesting thing to do would be, well, what does this universe of possibilities look like? For example, if I were to vary this cost of proactive step between 0 and 100% in increments of 2.5%, and I were to vary the cost or this reduction in the chance of the bad outcome, it reduces by any number between 0 and 100%, right? What would be the best courses of action in each case? That builds us a strategy table like this. In the columns here, I have by how much does the proactive step reduce the chance of the bad outcome? From 0 doesn't reduce at all to 100% basically gets rid of the risk. And in the rows, I have what percentage of the bad outcome cost is the cost of the proactive step, from 0, as in proactive step is free, all the way to one proactive step costs as much as the bad outcome, which is of course some extreme situation. So the green area where the number 1 is says, if this is your situation, don't take the proactive step. Just stay as is. The orange area says, if this is a situation, that is, if the proactive step reduces the chance of the bad outcome by this much and it costs this much of the cost of the bad outcome, then do it. And the yellow ones with the number 3 are representing ties, as in, it doesn't really matter if that's the situation, right? In this example, let's say, if it reduces the chance by 12.5% and costs 7.5% of the bad outcome, it's indifferent, right? So what you have to think then is, where am I inside this box? If I am in the orange area, I should take the proactive step. If I'm in the green area, I should not. I haven't looked at the entire data about COVID to see where we are, but it seems that, most scientists and leaders agree that we are likely in the orange area, right? And that's the situation. Now, to close this video and not make it too long, I wanted to make one final comment, which is a misleading way of thinking that I see a lot of people going down that path. Notice here, even if you take the proactive step, let me go back to my original example, which was, according to this example, the right thing to do, there is still a chance things will go south, right? Now, does that mean that then, well, if there's still a chance that things will go south, even if I do this, why do it? I mean, this is completely illogical to think that way, right? Because you have to think about risk and chances. There's a very good sports analogy that I like to use, and it goes like this. Well, oftentimes, let's look at basketball. LeBron James has the opportunity to take the final shot. Let's say it's a few seconds left, and he has the ball, but he sees a teammate open. Now the question is, at that moment, and you can tell he does that because afterwards in interviews he talks about this. He thinks, okay, what is the percent of the shot that I can get, the percentage of making it, the chance of making it, and what is the chance of making it if I pass it? And what he does often is, and in his words, quote, I make the right decision and I live with the consequences. That is, he thinks about the percentages, and he has all of that data in his mind and says, well, if I pass it to Ray Allen in the corner, he shoots at 40% from that position, and me shooting from here is 30%. I'm going to pass it. Of course, there is a chance Ray Allen will miss it, and then everybody was going to come and say, well, LeBron passed it, he should have taken the shot. But in his mind, what he's doing is, I am looking at the probabilities. And at that moment, the only logical thing to do is to take a 40% shot over a 30% shot. Even if there is a miss, I live with the consequences. And if I always operate like this, in the long run, you're going to have the best outcomes. So if you go against what the numbers are saying, of course there's a chance you're going to come out at the end and say, see, I didn't do what you said and nothing happened. I was right. No, you weren't. You weren't right, right? You just got lucky. And we don't want to operate in this fashion, right? We want to operate by having our decisions be based on the numbers and the facts. Of course, there's always going to be something that is out of our hands, but we're always making the right decision and then living with the consequences. All right, this is all I had to say. I hope this video helps clarify some of this way of thinking, and it helps some people see this whole situation And of course, many other situations can be framed in a similar fashion, right? So I hope this helps people frame their thoughts and their reasoning. Nice having you guys over here, and I'll see you back in the next video. Bye-bye.